Welcome back to Que-pasa-Nashville. Thank you very much for joining me. My name is Christina Allen, and I enjoy sharing you about the opportunities and challenges Latinos in our immigrant community bring to Middle Tennessee. Today, right now, I have Wade Munday, who's the Executive Director of the Justice for Our Neighbors. JFON is what it's known for, is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you for being on the show. And what an amazing group of a nonprofit to serve our immigrant and refugee community. And can you explain exactly what Justice for Our Neighbors is and how you work?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here and talk about the work of our wonderful attorneys. Our staff of attorneys at Justice for Our Neighbors helps immigrants who have a humanitarian claim to remain in the United States lawfully. Our immigration process is very complicated and complex. It favors the wealthy, it favors individuals who already have a job here in the United States, and it really is a complicated, time-consuming process for a lot of people. However, all around the world, people want to be reunited with their families, they want economic opportunities, or they simply want to be safe. And so our attorneys and paralegals at Justice for Our Neighbors help them with those humanitarian claims.
And they have the right for those humanitarian claims because they're here through political asylum, religious persecution. They're here legally, and they have the 14th Amendment, is that correct? They have the rights. You correct me.
So actually, that's an interesting point that you bring up. The 6th Amendment is the basis for any criminal in the United States to have a right to counsel. However, anyone in immigration court, they don't have a court-appointed attorney. Throughout the United States, there are hundreds of thousands of immigrants who have a right to remain in the United States because of their humanitarian need. Maybe they're being persecuted overseas, but they don't have a lawyer. And so can you imagine being a 6-year-old child fleeing gang violence in Honduras, and you have to go before a judge and plead your case? You don't speak the language, and you're intimidated by this person in a black robe. So
your job is to represent them.
That's right.
Those in dire need of your services to guide them through our through our system to get them either reunited status or whatever.
That's right.
What are some important cases that have happened here in Nashville that you can share?
So something that began 5 years ago with the explosion of violence in Central America, the Northern Triangle, the countries of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. There are young people whose parents have been murdered. They've been separated from their families for one reason or another. Poverty, neglect contributes to it. And they've been fleeing in hundreds of thousands across Mexico, crossing the border. And they have family members, distant relatives who live here in the United States, and they want to be reunited with them. They have a valid claim, a humanitarian claim to be here in the United States.
Because of their violence in their country.
Right, and because they've been separated from their primary caregiver. So those unaccompanied minors have been relocated with family members here in Middle Tennessee, and the Office of Refugee Resettlement keeps track of those numbers. So far in this fiscal year, we've resettled nearly 2,000 unaccompanied minors here in Tennessee. They don't have enough money to afford an attorney.
To get them to be here legally.
To remain here lawfully. They've got to go through family court, and then they've got to go to immigration court. And our attorneys coordinate that representation and try to represent them in court so they can stay here, so that they can stay safe.
And is that a challenge, or is that pretty...
It's a tremendous challenge. It is overwhelming.
Why?
Because funding is sorely lacking for services like this. We have to
services for the legal to represent them?
That's right, yeah.
Because they don't have a problem being with their family members once they're here.
That's right. Their family members are working, their family members are lawful residents of the United States, but in many cases, they just need an attorney who can make sure that they are here safely. If they are deported back to their home country, they face certain death.
Well, and also, so you seek out donations and opportunities to fund your lawyers that are volunteering or salaried?
We have 2 attorneys on staff, and they're highly trained, skilled, bilingual attorneys who have experience in this type of immigration law, humanitarian immigration law. But we also rely on pro bono assistance from attorneys who are immigration attorneys, or even private attorneys can volunteer.
They give up donated hours to you to represent several cases.
That's right.
That's huge.
Last year, approximately $250,000 of donated hours from volunteer attorneys were contributed to our cause.
And these are Tennessee attorneys.
That's right.
So there's a point where they're giving back to our own community for humanitarian legal needs of our youth coming in undocumented.
Absolutely. An initiative of the Tennessee Bar Association and the Tennessee Supreme
So
Court.
they see it as
Yeah.
important. Okay.
That's right.
So I want to talk about the Syrian refugees.
Yeah.
I know that was a huge issue. It's still a huge issue. I know Haslam came out like, wait a minute, let's put the stops on how many we're going to take in. But he also pulled back from that initiative, and Governor Haslam has now welcomed more refugees to the state of Tennessee. Is that correct?
Right. He has said he's willing to welcome more refugees into Tennessee. He now believes in the vetting process that the federal government conducts. In many cases, it takes 2 years, 10 background checks and interviews with the person. And in most cases, these are women and children who want to be relocated.
So again, the U.S. has the harshest vetting process, probably?
Probably.
From any other country.
In addition to the fact that we take in a very small number of refugees from Syria, we also have, 2 oceans on either side of us that protect us from, a massive influx of refugees like we see in Europe.
And, is the world kind of slapping our hand like take more? I think Britain has kind of
I think the European Union and Britain have definitely asked for the United States to step up, and that's nothing new.
And so as Haslam pulled away, what's stopping us from bringing in more of the Syrian refugees here that have been vetted, 10 background checks, women and children? What is stopping that?
The federal government actually has a very low quota to fill, and they've already filled it this year. They're ahead of schedule.
The federal government. How about
That's right.
And so we are open to welcome more as a state?
That's right. And it's determined by the federal government, the placement process. And so the federal government says they're going to take 10,000. They adjusted that upwards to accept more. And so now that we've reached that quota, they've gone on to other parts of the country, and they've been resettled there.
So with the people that are coming in, what has been the response from Tennesseans in welcoming them?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. I think most people who come in contact with Syrian refugees recognize that they are warm, kind-hearted people who are simply trying to make a better life for themselves and for their families. In fact, they're just trying to save their lives. And so when you come in contact with someone who is in such a desperate situation, it's hard as a Tennessean, as a human being, not to love them and not to show them compassion. But as you well know, people who don't come in contact with them, people who might think that it's strange to wear that type of clothing outside, they're going to be afraid of them. And that's understandable, but it's something that Tennesseans need to overcome and welcome these people.
So as Nashville is a welcoming city, we know it based on the initiatives of our mayor, of our own companies. It's been a global community with all these different global businesses headquartering here. What do we say to our own Tennesseans, our rural people, that just are never in contact with these people? How do we demystify that fear that comes with a refugee?
Yeah, come out and volunteer. There are places in Nashville and in Tennessee where you can volunteer. If you're an attorney, you can volunteer with Justice for Our Neighbors. You can come in contact with people from different cultures and interact with them and realize that they are no different from you or I. They are simply here trying to make a better life for their families.
But I also see a lot of Christian churches, all different types of churches, really, really adopting some of these families. Is that still very... Is that still happening even though we slow down on our refugees coming in, but the ones that are here already? Yeah,
churches are a great place to also interact with people of different cultures. I know growing up in my hometown of Gallatin, Tennessee, there were Sudanese refugees who were living amongst us, and I would drive them to church on on Sunday mornings. And so that's one way that you can interact with people from different cultures and gain a better understanding of where they come from and who they are.
Let's take it to another direction. Let's talk about DACA, the Deferred Action Childhood Arrivals, which is President Obama's executive order to allow children that came here as young children with their undocumented parents to have a DACA status. It's not a green card, it's not a USN, it's just a status that allows them to what? What exactly, how do they get that?
So it's a win for everyone involved, and I think most Democrats and a lot of Republicans would agree that this is a smart economic move, because what it does is it brings these people out of the shadows so that they can work lawfully. Students, young people from the ages of 15 to 35 roughly, so that they are enrolled in school, they have a social security number, so that they are working lawfully. So it protects, contributing to the economy and protecting the employer from committing a third-party crime by receiving DACA. And also they're able to earn more for their families. They're able to become high earners.
And the whole purpose is that as we grow as a economically in the state, community and economic development as a state, and in recruiting major companies, we need an educated workforce. And these kids are graduating with 3.6s, a good ACT score. They're still not in-state tuition, which we'll talk about later,
Right.
but these are employable, educated workforce.
Right. And one of the most heartbreaking things that I hear is from a young person who's graduated the top of their class in high school, and when they're going to fill out their federal student aid, they realize they don't have a Social Security number.
Wow.
They can't go to college. They're barred from college because they realize suddenly at 18 years old that they're undocumented. And so DACA is one small step for some of those students to overcome that barrier and achieve their dreams.
But DACA students are not allowed to get in-state tuition yet.
That's right, yeah. There is a push within state government, and some Democrats, some Republicans have come together to say they've been living here sometime.
They're employable,
They're
they're smart.
living here, they're smart, they're employable. We need to give them a discount on their college education because, you know, it promotes the state, it promotes our culture.
And they're going to they're not
everyone
leaving
involved.
either.
Yeah, that's right.
I think what's very exciting is that we have more and more people opening up and trying to get them in state tuition or pay for their colleges, more organizations. But we also have to know that there's a strong need for young adults to work, whether they have vocational educated college or just mid-level, I think, opportunities for them in management positions. There's a lot of employees looking for them, and we hope to continue to connect them. As we look at JFON, and what are your objectives in the upcoming next year?
Yeah, so our board just met and we've developed a strategic plan so that we can really meet the needs of the most vulnerable immigrant population here in Middle Tennessee area. We're a statewide organization, but we operate out of Nashville mostly. And what we've identified is these unaccompanied minors, young people who have to represent themselves in immigration court, they deserve a lawyer. We also have prioritized asylum seekers, individuals who are fleeing their home countries because they've been persecuted on the basis of race, religion, and gender, or identification with a political group. Those people deserve
in their home
to be
countries,
safe. That's
yes.
right.
So I've heard a lot of stories about that. Wade, this has been very exciting. It's to understand that you are dealing with our growth of our international community, refugees, and we thank you for your time and really the organization of that, because that is very important. So we'll welcome you back when there's another issue, and please do so.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining que-pasa-Nashville. Join us each week as we talk about the opportunities and challenges Latinos bring to Middle Tennessee, as well as our immigrant and refugee community. And I'm going to even say, even as well as international business, it does make a difference. Muchas gracias.